Is Prince Harry unhappy with the LA celebrity life? What's the story behind this Beatrice and Eugenie hug? What was in the secret deal between King Charles and his brother Andrew? And are the royals planning to bring Prince George out for more engagements? All this and more on another great episode. Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential. My name is Jo Elvin and today I'm joined by the Daily Mail's royal editor Rebecca English, who is back from her trip to Brazil with Prince William. More on that later. And the newspaper's diary editor Richard Eden. Welcome to you both. Before we speak to our panel, here is your usual reminder to please do like and subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel. It's free and it ensures you never miss any of our exclusive royal content, such as the interview with journalist Andy Webb that we posted earlier this week. Andy revealed the sinister details behind that Princess Diana interview, and if you want to find out why Diana was convinced Charles wanted her dead, you really should check out that video. There are some truly shocking revelations. And if that isn't enough to satisfy all your royal cravings, you can sign up to the Palace Confidential newsletter by scanning the QR code that's on your screen now, or by clicking the link in the description below. It's free, and if you like what we do on this channel, I think you'll love the newsletter as well. Now, we saw a lot of the royals this week as they stepped out for a series of remembrance events. So let's get discussing with my panel. Rebecca, hi, I don't know if you remember me. My name's Jo.
I've missed you.
It's great to have you back.
I've missed the whole team.
We have missed you, and I know the viewers have as well.
It's a busy time, though.
Well, let's catch up. So let's start with King Charles, who led the nation in a 2-minute silence on Remembrance Sunday, and obviously one of the most important events in both the royal but also the national calendar, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's important for them professionally, but also personally. All of them have very strong personal links with the armed forces and the military in this country, and obviously the king is head of the military, and you know, when people go to fight, they're going to fight and potentially lay down their lives in service of their country in his name. So it's something that's really with a huge personal resonance to them.
Yeah.
And I always think it's incredibly moving as the years go on, and the generations that have served in obviously the First but the Second World War now are growing smaller. It's, you know, it's a very, very meaningful event for this country.
It really is, and it's obviously a sombre and sort of reflectional occasion, but Richard, it's also a pretty good one for royal watchers. Who else might we have seen at the cenotaph?
Well, I mean, pretty much everyone was there. The one that I was pleased to see, amazing really at his age, was the Duke of Kent.
Definitely.
You know, still laying a wreath at the age of 90.
Well,
I mean,
he's often been one of our unsung heroes, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it really is amazing. I mean, what's, you know, the official retirement age in our country? It tends to be about 65. He's still working hard, you know, you look up the court circular, he's still carrying out the engagements. He is increasingly frail, but he was determined to be there. You know, because the military means a lot to him, as it does to all the royal family.
And I love the fact they put the Duchess of Edinburgh with him on the, you know, the balcony at the Foreign Office, and they made a really lovely, you know, pairing, I thought. I
think everyone's really treasuring him at this stage.
Good, I'm glad. Well, Armistice Day this year fell on a Tuesday, and we saw Queen Camilla surprising commuters at Paddington Station, and also there was our hardworking royal editor. What was going on? Tell us about that.
Very early start on Tuesday. I had to get a train out to Chippenham in Wiltshire to meet the Queen and her team there, and they were getting a train back into London, the 9:28 train, surprising commuters. But it's a great initiative called Poppies to Paddington.
Let me just ask, did it all go to plan with the train? Did it arrive
Funny
on
enough,
time?
unlike my train, which left late, hers definitely didn't leave. In fact, it even arrived early.
Yeah.
But it's a great initiative by Great Western Railway that during the COVID pandemic, they still wanted to mark remembrance events, and particularly Armistice Day, which obviously is 11 a.m. on the 11th of 11th when the guns fell silent. And so they put wreaths on commuter trains coming into London. They have a ceremony on platform 1 at Paddington. So Queen Camilla brought her own wreath, but she also met some school children on the station platform, and they gave her this amazing kind of wreath made of crocheted poppies they'd given to take with her. And she stopped off at Swindon and collected some more wreaths en route, and then was a really moving ceremony at the station. Again, I know it's something she takes really seriously because she's, you know, a very great supporter of the armed forces, and her father was, her late father, Brucham, was a World War II hero. hugely decorated and was a prisoner of war. So it's something that's got real personal resonance for her as well.
And meanwhile, the Princess of Wales attended an Armistice Day service in Staffordshire. Now, Richard, this was the first time that Catherine had attended the service at the National Memorial Arboretum. It would have been a big event for her to do this solo, wouldn't it?
Yes, it was. I mean, Prince William, obviously having been away in Brazil last week, was carrying out fewer engagements. So Catherine was there on her own, looking magnificent, I have to say. I think often when she's in the dark clothes and hat, she just has an amazing profile. But she seemed to carry out everything with aplomb. It was a very moving ceremony with a very poignant poem that was read out. And overall, I think you could tell that everyone was delighted that she was there.
I thought one of the really lovely bits at the end of it, when she went to meet some of the surviving veterans who were like 100 and 101, and she instinctively kind of, despite that great finery and that amazing Jane Taylor hat, she just got down on her knees to talk to them and holding their hands. And I thought it was a really instinctive gesture. You know, she was really interested to hear their stories and said, thank you for sharing them with me, which I thought was really touching.
Oh, I love that. Now, obviously, the little headline stealer, though, was our Prince George, who made his debut at a Remembrance event. He was there for the first time, accompanying his mother to the Royal British Legion's Festival of Remembrance at Royal Albert Hall. Now, were we expecting to see George, Rebecca?
I got a heads up of a few hours that he was going, and actually they made a point to say he's not there replacing his father. He's there because he really wants to be there. I think he's got quite a fascination, like probably a lot of boys his age, you know, teenagers or approaching teenagers have got. And do you remember over some of the 80th events over the summer, he came to Buckingham Palace for tea and really listened, fascinated to some of the stories these veterans had
just
to
getting so grown up.
Yeah, had to tell. So, and actually, I think Catherine mentioned when she was at her thing at the National Arboretum that he's really into Airfix models and knows more about World War II planes than she does. So you can tell that it's something that really fascinates him.
Oh, now, Richard, you touched on the fact that William wasn't there, and some were questioning on social media, you can't do anything right, can you, when you're a royal, that why William wasn't there, given that our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, who'd also been in Brazil, actually did make it to the Albert Hall.
Yes. Well, I think in the case of the Prime Minister, he had come back a day earlier than William, who had another engagement to carry out in Brazil. So I think that's why William wasn't there on Saturday. But yeah, I quite liked it in a way because it emphasised Prince George's importance and the way that he's being kind of nurtured and brought into these royal events is really moving, I think. And the interest in the forces, they're obviously impressing on him. And I remember when he met those veterans at the VJ Day commemorations in the summer.
The VE Day ones.
VE Day ones. It was a tea party at Buckingham Palace. And I think everyone was very impressed with the questions that he was asking. So, you know, he's really engaged in it. And I think I love seeing them as well, who's really getting into the hymns. You know, they sort of, the cameras pan to George's face when, during Abide With Me, for example, and he was really heartily singing along.
Well, I mean, whatever the case was, you know, with George, I think he was there for rave reviews, and he was a lovely stand-in for his father. He was seen shaking hands and listening to performances with Hannah Waddingham, Sir Rod Stewart. Do you think, Rebecca, we can expect to see more of Prince George at these events?
Yes, but no. But I think, yes, inevitably as he gets older, but we're not going to see a huge flurry of them. I think it's going to be, they're going to take the same approach they always have, very slowly, in his own time, things that he can feel comfortable at and he's got an interest in. And obviously, as we started off by saying, you know, remembrance events are a hugely important part of our national life. So it's a good thing to introduce him to a more formal role in. But again, they still want him to be a young boy, and I know he's, you know, busy studying for exams and things like that at the moment, doing lots of tests because he'll be going off to senior school next year. So I think their priority is still that.
But Richard, do you think that when we do see George at these events, are we basically watching, you know, active king in training manoeuvres?
Yes, I think we are.
Yeah.
You know, he's second in line to the throne, so we have to see everything through that prism. But this is a boy who hasn't even started secondary school, you know, so he's learning the ropes, but he's learning the important stuff. We know the emphasis that William and Catherine have put on raising him as well as his siblings.
Yeah.
And from everything we've seen, they're doing a very good job. But it's that gradual introduction, isn't it? We want him to enjoy it, don't we? We don't want him, his parents to say, "Oh, we'd like you to come to this," and him say, "No, I'm not going." If he is enthusiastic and if he's interested, engaged, that's brilliant, isn't it?
Exactly, because obviously, when you're in that family, the duty and things that you might not jump for joy at, that's in your future anyway, isn't it? And so you don't need to bring that on earlier.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
They want him to have as an unfettered life as he can, because he's got a whole world of duty and tradition and a very, very directional route ahead of him. So let him enjoy life as a child as well.
Well, what do you think? We've got a question for our audience now. Do you think Prince George should attend more events? After the show, head on over to our YouTube post to cast your vote. And remember, the final results of that poll will be revealed in this week's free newsletter. Rebecca, just quickly, I'd really love to hear what you thought of Catherine's Alessandra Rich dress that she wore on Saturday, because I know that there was some debate about it online, wasn't there?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it wasn't my favourite outfit of hers. I thought it looked very kind of early Puritan, but that probably says as much about my fashion choices as it does about hers. And, let's face it, she'd look good in a plastic bag.
It's
she?
very
So,
on trend.
Yeah.
If I sort of said to my husband, "This is what I'm wearing tonight," he would tell me I look like the Witchfinder General, but that's just him. It's kind of got that sort of that era about it.
Yeah, I
hasn't it?
tell you what was more interesting than her dress is the fact I noticed she had a diamond cross around her neck, and I thought that was fascinating, because we've heard a lot in the last year from sources close to them that her and William have, found religion a little bit more, given all they've gone through with her cancer battle over the last year. William has received criticism in the past for not really going to church publicly as a future head of, the Church of England and Supreme Governor of the Church of England one day, and I just thought it was quite interesting that she was wearing a cross, because I don't remember seeing her wearing crosses a lot over the past.
This is why you're so good at your job. You sort of notice all the little details. Now, as we mentioned, William had a very busy week in Brazil, so of course, so did Rebecca. We want to hear all about it. You sent us a video message from Rio last week, which we loved, but now that you're back and you've had some time to sort of let the trip sink in and get some perspective, what are your thoughts on it and how William did out there?
He had such a warm reception in Brazil. William loved Brazil and Brazil loved William. There's no doubt about that.
Did you love Brazil?
I've been there once before with Prince Harry many moons ago. We only spent a day in Rio, so I spent more time in Rio. What a fantastic city. There's such a vibrancy about it.
Yeah.
And when your commute to work in the morning takes you along Copacabana Beach, I can't really complain about my job.
I've got to go. I'm getting jealous now. I'd love to go to Brazil.
Yeah.
and I talked through Kensington Palace how they were going to approach this trip, and so day one, although he was obviously very much there for his Earthshot Prize Awards, and that was always there in the background, whatever he did, day one was about setting the scene, about placing him in Brazil and particularly in Rio de Janeiro. So, he was straight out the gates. He went up Sugarloaf Mountain. He was playing football at, Rio's biggest football stadium, which I keep on calling the Macarena, and it's not the Macarena.
I had to be corrected last week. I did that by accident.
Maracana with Cafu, one of Brazilia's. I'm told actually Brazil's greatest ever right back. I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but that has been drummed into me. And also, to memorably end that first day playing beach volleyball on Copacabana Beach. And I think I made the point in the video, because of security issues, none of these individual engagements were publicised in advance, but word started to get out, and the minute people spotted him, big crowds turned up and people were chanting his name, William, William, William.
Wow.
He was really popular, and what I found very interesting, his late mother, Diana, is remembered very fondly there, particularly for her visit in 91 when she held a young child who had HIV, which was considered a huge part of her work in reducing the stigma around that. And there's a definite association, despite all of the other royal visits that have been taken by members of the royal family to Brazil over the years. There's a definite correlation between William and his mother, 30 years ago. But I thought he did a great job, actually. He was, fun and statesmanlike in equal measure, and you could see the passion he was bringing to Earthshot Prize and how touched he was that the people of Brazil seemed to embrace it so much as well. So I think a big tick for him on that one.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So he also, Richard, gave a fascinating interview to Brazilian TV host Luciano Huck, where he revealed how he and Catherine opened up about her cancer battle with their children. It's got to be one of the biggest, most problematic conversations a parent can have with their child.
It really does, yeah. I mean, what struck me was that William seems to be increasingly frank in these interviews. Now, you remember the interview with Eugene Levy at Windsor, and this was another one, where essentially the theme of it was he was talking about how to discuss difficult subjects with children. How do you do it? And it's something all parents grapple with. And they said they sort of took the decision to be as honest as possible and give as much information as they could. And he actually worried that sometimes they might have sort of overshared a bit. They don't want to alarm the children, but at the same time they want them to know everything.
And well, you want your kids to know, don't you, that you're being honest with them and that you're not deceiving them in some way. That's the thing.
Yeah. But so he was talking about that dilemma essentially, which from everything we've heard seems to have been handled okay. The children have learnt about their mother's cancer diagnosis and have dealt with it. And he seems to be happy to talk about it, which I would say is a really good sign.
And he's also coming up against one of the new frontiers in parenting, Rebecca, isn't it? Where William also confirmed that none of their children have phones. But this may be changing soon for George. This is one of the real hot button topics of our day, isn't it?
Well, I think I was saying to you, I was having this conversation at 7 o'clock this morning doing the school run. Put that phone down. Every parent of children, it's a perennial conversation we have. And we obviously are aware of it because Catherine wrote an essay in October in which she talked about, how damaging phones were to family life. And William has said, look, none of our children have it. I mean, obviously Louis wouldn't, he's only 7, and Charlotte, I would argue, only 10. But obviously George is at an age where, a lot of his peers do have phones. And he said that him and Catherine have been very strict on this. And he said, we think he understands, but it's becoming a more tense conversation. And he said, we might, when he goes to senior school next year, let him have one of the old-fashioned Nokia brick phones. But what he doesn't want him to have access to is unfettered access to the internet. I think that's something that will resonate with a lot of parents, and particularly in their position, because we all know the really nasty, vile stuff that has been written about the royal family online. They don't want him to see that.
There's that. There's just all the nasty, unfiltered stuff out there that we know children access. It's like, I wonder if somebody like the royal family laying down that law with their son might actually affect policy in that school about mobile phones.
Well, certainly William has tried to affect policy in this area. A few years ago he set up a kind of tech task force, and he had to admit it failed miserably because the tech giants like Google, Facebook, all those things, they just didn't want to get involved. They didn't want extra regulation, and they didn't want to self-regulate. So he was very frustrated, so it was quite a big bugbear for him, that.
I'd say it's a really controversial subject. I mean, generally we've found among parents that they let their children have phones when they go to secondary school, which is generally about the age of 11. In George's case, because he's going to a private school, it's 2 years later. He'll be 12 or 13, which is late anyway. But the problem is, if he just has a brick phone, then smartphones now are part of life, aren't they? That's the thing. And so it's a sort of growing up. I mean, I remember at school, when I was at school, the child who didn't have a TV, oh my goodness, they were kind of ostracised. Everyone would be talking about what was on telly last night, and if you didn't have a TV, you wouldn't be able to engage in those conversations.
Well, this is a whole other conversation. Like, the TV is not quite the unfiltered sewer that the internet can be, but
No.
it does. Obviously, it is a huge question that all parents wrestle with.
Yeah.
But what do you think this shows about how the Walesers want to engage with this, and with this issue?
Well, it shows they have strong views, and it shows what a thorny subject it is. But remember as well, because William and Catherine, they've dedicated so much time to sort of privacy, and they've been very keen on trying to protect the privacy of their family. And so then if you have the prospect of your children, having access to everything online, it's kind of horrendous prospect, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
So it's hard for any parent, I would say, but particularly difficult for them.
Well, funnily enough, it's time for your comments now, and the first one is about royal phones. Claire Catorelli emailed us to say, "Hi, I really love your programme and never miss an episode." Well, we never get sick of hearing that, do we?
No.
Thank you. Prince William has several times spoken about how he and Princess Catherine raised their children. For example, they don't have mobiles. I was just wondering if the children are okay with the information going out to everybody. Keep up the good work. It's interesting, isn't it, Rebecca? This will be a conversation that's gone on behind closed doors. Presumably there's a security risk as well.
Yes, I mean, obviously mobile phones can be tracked and things like that, so, there's a concern about that. I mean, the one thing I suppose they don't have is that a lot of us as parents of teenage kids, we all have things like Live 360 on our phones now, so we can see where our children are. Unfortunately for George, he's always going to have security with him, so that's not going to be a problem. He literally has a physical person tracking him. But, William made a point of saying in that interview, as I've said, that, he thinks Georgia understands, but it's definitely a more tense conversation, and it's one they'll have to continue to have.
And I suppose the question here is also, is it a bit annoying, almost embarrassing for a boy of that age to know that this is a public conversation about whether or not I get to be a grown-up and have a phone?
I see what you're saying. I mean, look, they clearly have a very close relationship with their children, and I'd like to think William wouldn't share anything in public that his son wouldn't be happy to. That said, as the mother of a teenage boy, I am a perpetual embarrassment. There is nothing I can do.
That means you're doing your job well.
Remotely cool or interesting
That is
or
our role in
like
life, is to be an embarrassment.
A perpetual embarrassment to our children. So, you know, good luck, William.
Yeah.
I feel your pain.
Apparently, if I say hello to people we see in the street, that's really embarrassing.
It's the way you say hello. It's the fact you breathe, Joe, let's face it.
I'll work on that, I promise. Now, back to the comments, and we received so many from viewers in Brazil who welcomed Prince William with open arms, including Nossa Diva, who wrote, "The visit of Prince William was a total triumph. He is loved over here, and he and his lovely family are the future of the monarchy. God bless them." While Eliana Garisto added, "Prince William has done a great job here in Brazil. He is a real statesman, charismatic, dedicated, hands-on. I'm delighted to watch him interacting with people. Bravo, viva." And Nahika commented, "I'm from Brazil and we are really honoured to welcome Prince William here. Rebecca, so happy to see you here too. Hope you all have a wonderful time and also come back soon." Will you be going back, Rebecca?
I'd love to go back, and actually, more importantly, William said he'd love to go back, and I think he wouldn't mind, you know, taking the children one day, so...
We really need to get this Palace Confidential tour on the road. I'm sick of missing out, aren't you?
I'd actually love to go away with you guys. It'd be really good fun. I think.
You might regret saying that.
That's nice thinking.
Thank you so much to all of you who commented from Brazil. Do we have any other viewers from South America? Do let us know in the comments so we can give you a shout out next week. Lots of you have watched and enjoyed our interview with journalist Andy Webb, including GM Gaston, who commented the programme was outstanding as it consistently is. I believe that Martin Bashir should be held accountable and prosecuted for his actions. I don't think you're alone there, Gaston. We had lots of great comments like that, so a reminder that if you missed that episode with Andy Webb, it will play straight after this. And finally, we received this very pressing question from Suzanne Porter, who asked, well, it's not, the first is not a question, it's just an exclamation. "Richard's hair!" Lots of exclamation marks. Has he dyed it? And the sideburns. I don't know. Richard, I'm not seeing any glimmers of an autumn sunset.
Who's this cheeky monkey asking this question? No, I don't dye my hair, and as an encouragement to watch this programme, you know, if you carry on watching week by week, you can watch me becoming more and more grey. So.
Me too, yeah.
Keep watching.
Well, speaking of appearances, we did have quite a few nice ones about our outfits last week. Thank you very much. So we'll put a link about what we're wearing in the description below. And you can even buy some of the pieces if you want. Let's do, obviously the fans love a quick sock check, Richard. Are these corgis again?
Yes, they are, yeah. So
nice Argyle design there.
Yes, our viewers can get a discount, I think.
This indeed. They are sort of like, if you want to buy socks like Richard or indeed any other knitwear from Corgi, who hold a royal warrant, don't you know, you're in luck because they're offering viewers of Palace Confidential a 20% discount on your first order. All you have to do is head to the site and add the code PALACE20. We'll put a link and more info on that deal in the description below, just in time for Christmas. Great gift ideas. So thank you, as always, for your comments. And YouTube has opened a new community feature on our channel where you can go and leave us messages and talk to other viewers and even share pictures. So if you're looking for royal conversation, go and check it out. That's exciting. Well, back to my panel now, and let's start with this discussion with a video of Beatrice and Eugenie out in central London in the past few days. Richard, this was two people who, it's fair to say, have been through the ringer, haven't they?
Those poor women, I mean, really, can you imagine? They've been through so much. You know, it's bad enough if something's about you in public, but when it's your parents and it's been ongoing for months after months, it's horrendous. But I think these clips, this video, the images we've seen just show how close they remain, the sisters, how they've relied on each other and how they've comforted each other. And I think they remain as close as ever from what I've heard.
Rebecca, this comes a few days after your piece, speaking of the closeness, about that so-called tripod of Fergie and the two girls collapsing. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dramatic phrase, but I've been told that, look, they are and they remain very supportive of their parents. But this has been a very difficult time, and I think it's fair to say the scales have dropped from their eyes in certain parts of their parents' behaviour, but they remain very supportive of them overall.
But we've also heard more news, haven't we, relating to Andrew, contained in the emails of the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It just keeps on coming, doesn't it?
And it goes to prove why the King was very right in taking the steps he has. So we've had obviously a dump overnight of emails coming from America from Epstein's email accounts, and some do raise Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as he's now known. And it's very interesting from two aspects. Firstly, we have Epstein himself confirming that the infamous photograph of Andrew with Virginie Giuffre is perfectly real. It's not a fake, because I think any reasonable person has always drawn that conclusion. It was only Andrew's big fans that were trying to suggest that there was anything doctored in it. And of course, the reason why that photograph is so central, because it is the smoking gun in this. Aside from a couple of flight logs, it's the one thing that places him in the company of Virginie Giuffre. Until, apart from that, it would be a case of he says, she says. But this shows you they actually met. And it's a photograph, I think, that leaves quite a lot of people uncomfortable. And I think the second interesting aspect of these emails is an email that Andrew has written to Ghislaine Maxwell saying, what the hell is this all about? You've got to basically keep my name out of it. This is nothing to do with me. And says, I can't take any more of this. I mean, I think it's quite an interesting phrasing, because that could be the statement of a guilty man saying, I can't take any more of this to my public persona, or it could be the cry of an anguished innocent man saying, this is really unfair.
Yeah.
I think most people would draw the former conclusion rather than the latter. But I think what is so interesting and so damning is that it places Andrew in an orbit of evil, and one that he had publicly distanced himself from via Buckingham Palace, saying, I culled my relations with them when, I realised how foolish and how unwise I'd been. And yet again, we have another email train, and that is very, very damaging.
That's what I just cannot get my head around, is like, once you know who Jeffrey Epstein is and you're still emailing him and saying we're friends,
or emailing people around him,
yeah.
You would just take yourself out of that situation. And he, again, it shows you that he had chosen not to do that. And more importantly, Buckingham Palace, who were acting as a spokesman at the time, were putting this stuff out on his behalf. And it just goes to show why they have taken the action that they have.
Well, in slightly better news for the princesses, Beatrice was given a new job by the King, Richard, and you've written that this was part of a secret deal with Andrew.
Yeah, so just to be clear, so she wasn't sort of given this job by the King. What it is a new charity patronage. It's Outward Bound, which is a fantastic charity that gets young people out in the great outdoors, sense of adventure, really helping young people. She's been named as the Deputy Royal Patron, and the Royal Patron is her uncle Prince Edward. It was Prince Andrew before who was the Royal Patron, and for 65 years it was Prince Philip. So it's an important charity with a long royal pedigree, but it is an appointment that was approved by the King. And what I've written about this week is how this illustrates the secret deal, essentially, that was done with the King. So we know that he was, even though the King was stripping Andrew of his titles, his honours, as well as the Duchess of York title for Fergie, nothing was happening about Beatrice and Eugenie, that they could keep their princess titles, keep their places in the line of succession, but also what is new is that it's been made clear at this meeting that between the King and Andrew that they could carry on to acquire new royal roles, and this is the first evidence of that. And we've had more as well. We've had Beatrice visiting a hospital as part of her patronage of another really worthwhile charity called Born. And then in fact, I think it's today, we've had Eugenie out in her role with one of the King's charities. So what we're seeing is, yes, the King's shunned and distanced himself from Andrew and Fergie, but he really wants Beatrice and Eugenie to be a big part of the future of the royal family.
We will put a link to Richard and Rebecca's articles in the description below. I want to bring you in, Rebecca, and ask, so just explain this Eugenie thing today a bit more first.
Yeah, so earlier on this year she was announced as a mentor for the King's Foundation, which is the charitable initiative around the King promoting heritage arts and crafts and millinery and things like that. It's all centred up at Dumfries House, his house that he saved for the nation in Scotland. And she was announced as a mentor for the charity, and in particular for a big initiative it was doing the 35 under 35, so 35 of the really big talents in this country amongst young people. And this week, earlier on this week, she was out and about giving a speech in support of it, talking about her own career in arts and how much it meant to her and how important it was for them to continue in kind of what might be seen as niche industries, but nonetheless a really important part of the fabric of this country. And again, as Richard said, I think it shows you the fact that the King doesn't want his nieces, the children, to pay for the sins of the father, and that they will continue to hold public roles.
I think, yes, and I think a lot of people I've seen in comments have absolute solidarity and sympathy with that view. But given the timing and the constant revelations that just keep coming, is it wise for them to have visibility at this time?
I mean, this is there's been a lot of criticism because some people have claimed that Beatrice and Eugenie are being tainted by their parents' activities. There's been some examples that Andrew Loney, the author, has talked about, for example, where money was paid into one of Eugenie's accounts, wasn't it?
Well, but then,
and Beatrice's birthday party.
And Beatrice's birthday.
And then we saw this tea party appearance that looked like a business thing in Saudi Arabia with Beatrice. What's going on?
Yeah, so Beatrice, by the nature of her work, she works in software development and other IT stuff. She has close links with the Middle East. Indeed, she was there, I think, last week for a conference in the UAE. So she's there quite a lot. In fact, interestingly, I heard from someone who was on a flight back from Abu Dhabi with her on Monday. And
you've got your spies everywhere.
And what was interesting was she wasn't pampered at all. She was flying in economy.
That's interesting.
And it was on Emirates, and she wasn't given an upgrade. So maybe in the past, before the controversies, she would have been. But the only thing that sort of singled her out was when she arrived back at Heathrow, someone greeted her as Your Royal Highness, welcome back to London. But no, she is heavily involved in the Middle East with her work. And given her father's controversies in the Middle East, that is quite sensitive. So it's a sensitive issue, and I would say the King is being brave, really, to back them. I admire him for it because, as you know, I've always thought that they should play a bigger role in the royal family. But the King's really stuck his neck out over this, and I hope it turns out to be a wise decision.
Quite.
Well, I was going to, sorry, just to add, but there is a little bit of concern over this because there was a Daily Mail exclusive this week about that conference that Princess Beatrice attended, and she was holding an afternoon tea for some of the delegates there, and she was billed as Princess Beatrice of York. I actually think that was a grave mistake on her behalf and whoever's advising her, because I think what she does need to do, if she's going to continue to work in business, she's perfectly entitled to do. She receives no public money, but she should not be billing herself as Princess Beatrice of York. She should be Beatrice York or Beatrice Mapelli-Mozzi.
But she is Princess Beatrice of York. That is a fact.
But I think
does that still stand despite Andrew being stripped of the York dukedom?
Absolutely.
Right.
That's why they've done it in the way they have. Yeah. So Beatrice and Eugenie can still be princesses of York, but I just think both of them should have a clear delineation.
It's a bit provocative, right?
Their private money-making business interests and who they are personally. And I think it's perfectly, if she's a big leader in her field, Beatrice Mapelli-Mozzi or Beatrice York will have hopefully as much attraction as Princess Beatrice. But I really strongly believe that was a mistake to do that.
To be fair to them, I should say that generally they don't use their titles. So if you look them up in sort of business websites, they're always just under their
Well, that's why it's interesting that it was used there.
Yes, so I think that might have been because perhaps her hosts were keen to emphasise it. But you're right, it's a very sensitive, controversial subject.
Maybe she didn't realise, but that's something I think they need to be really alive to, especially now.
I could be naive. It could be something as innocent as like, we printed these weeks ago. I don't know.
Absolutely no, and it could be. But I just say I think they need to be alive to that, because I think if they want to stay immune to the kind of criticism their father has, been rightly criticised for over the years, that's something they've got to watch.
Let's stick with Andrew just for a moment, because as we know, he's been stripped of his titles and his mansion, but he's not losing the trappings without a fight, according to some quarters. That Barbara Davies in the Daily Mail on Saturday, what was reported was to be in his list of demands before he moves to Sandringham. He wants a cook, a housekeeper, a secretary cum butler, plus gardeners. He also wants an appropriate home and the right to roam. Sounds like a dog, doesn't it? Like, rather than be confined to his quarters. I mean, me as well. But I mean, where do you even start on this, Rebecca?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the truth of all of this. I mean, the only thing about the right to roam I find a bit surprising, because that's the whole point of him going to Sandringham, is he'll be stuck out in the middle of a very large estate. And the difference between Sandringham and Windsor is really significant, actually, and I think it's important for people to understand. Windsor, although it's a private estate, there's a lot of public right of way, and so that's why you'll often see photographs of Andrew riding horses when he was allowed to ride horses, because photographers can take pictures from public footpaths. Sandringham is completely a private estate, so once they are on that estate, unless they come off it on one of the public roads surrounding it, he will never be seen. So that's the only thing I don't really understand, because he's got every right to roam while he's there and no one will see him doing it. But yeah, according to the article, he still seems, full of the same delusions of grandeur as he's always been.
Well, it must be so hard and weird, mustn't it, Richard, to have grown up in that life of privilege and suddenly have it all stripped away. So it must be a hard lesson to come to terms with.
Well, this shows you the battle the king had, because remember, he was trying to force Andrew out of Royal Lodge for months, unsuccessfully. And so in return for finally doing that, Andrew's been able to say, I want this, I want that. And it's quite hard for the king to resist that, because Andrew has agreed to leave when he did have a legally binding, lease on his property. So it's going to be a sensitive subject, I think, for quite some time to come. I mean, at least I suppose it means that Andrew will be at Sandringham for Christmas this year. Maybe. We'll
Do you think?
We'll see. Oh. He certainly won't be on that walk to church on Christmas Day, though.
No, all round having the turkey, I would have thought.
No.
What do you think?
No, I very much doubt it.
Absolutely
not.
We haven't
Christmas.
We haven't had a chance to get your thoughts much on Andrew, Rebecca. You've been away. So what's your sense on where things stand now with the palace and Andrew? And do you have any thoughts on what's next?
I think there's a certain sense of relief, because as Richard rightly touches upon, Andrew has been a long-running sore for the family generally, but for the king particularly since he acceded to the throne. I mean, he will always continue to be a long-running sore, because as sources make clear to me, you can't sack someone from being a member of your family. they were born into it and they will always remain into it. But what the king has tried to do is distance Andrew as much as he can from them physically as well as, you know, professionally. So I think there's a sense of relief that what he's been trying to achieve has finally been achieved. He tried it nicely, he tried asking nicely, Andrew wouldn't listen, he tried threatening him, he tried forcing him out, he tried to smoke him out by taking away his money and security. Yeah, I mean, nothing worked. And I think it's really important to stress this, and I'm not saying this because I work for Associated Newspapers, but the absolute deciding point on this was a few weeks ago in the Mail on Sundays, really excellent exclusive, which revealed the existence of that email between Andrew and Epstein saying, you know, we're in this together, you know, let's play again soon. And that proved that his public assertions that he'd cut off all any kind of conversation or dealings with Epstein, that proved it to be a lie. And that, for the palace, was the decisive thing in all of this, because they realised, oh my God, he's lied about this publicly, he's got us to lie about it publicly, what other bodies are buried here? You know, we don't know what's coming down the tracks, and we have got to act now. And that's why they said to Andrew, if you don't do it voluntarily, we will do it for you. And of course they tried to do it voluntarily, and there was such a continuing public outcry that they knew they had to do it more officially. So it's been a difficult time for them, because I don't think the king, you know, wants to be awful to his brother. He's still his brother at the end of the day, and I think there's some family members that have said, look, maybe, you know, he's still our flesh and blood, take it a bit easy on him. But he's really had to strike a very lonely furrow on this and go ahead and do what he thinks right for the family and right for the institution of the monarchy.
Well, from the Duke who's been cast out to the one who is reportedly interested in coming back into the fold. We are, of course, talking about Prince Harry, who has been out partying with all the celebrities at Jeff Bezos' house for, was it Kris Jenner's birthday party. Richard, most people were all smiles there, but it is true, he didn't look very happy, did he, for a party?
No, so Prince Harry has spoken in the past about how he hates the photographers. We know that. He said it's traumatic for him when the flashbulbs go off. And so we saw him arriving at Jeff Bezos' mansion and had to sort of run the gauntlet of the paparazzi. It also had the effect, their bright lights, of highlighting his increasingly bald head, which is another very sensitive point for,
think about hair on
Harry.
this
Hang on a minute, you were just upset that someone was mentioning your hair.
Well,
yeah.
no. Well, it's fair to say, because one of the most unpleasant things in Harry's own book was he had a pop at his brother, saying that he was losing his hair quickly and stuff, which I couldn't believe he included that.
Took quite glee out of it, didn't
But
he?
anyway, you'll see from the pictures of Harry arriving with Meghan that, yeah, it's not very flattering. But also, crucially, when they got there, what made it worse was they discovered their place on this Hollywood hierarchy. So already at the party was Beyonce and her husband Jay-Z. And that's because they were allowed to quietly drive in their, you know, blacked out windowed vehicle and park inside the
so avoiding the paps.
Avoiding the paparazzi, but that privilege wasn't afforded to poor old Harry and Meghan.
Oh my gosh, I wonder if that's one of the reasons he wants his royal protection back.
I mean, look, let's be clear, it's so significant in terms of how they've fallen. I mean, you know, I remember them meeting Beyonce and Jay-Z at a premiere. It was a live action remake of The Lion King.
Yeah, I was there covering it. Yeah.
So you know they stood there dutifully to wait for Harry and Meghan in the lineup, and then, you know, Harry and Meghan met them, and that was the occasion when Harry thought, you know what, I'll use this to tout for a bit of business for Meghan, and he was asking the boss of Disney if she could do some voiceovers for the company. But in that case, you know, Beyonce and Jay-Z had to wait for them. Well, now, you know, it's the other way round, and it really does show how the mighty have fallen.
Well, there was also a bit of a scandal, wasn't there, Rebecca, about the pictures having to be withdrawn from social media?
Yeah, so the Kardashians, who obviously huge presence on social media, put up a lot of kind of behind the scenes and inside pictures from the party, because the only ones we'd seen, as Richard says, were of the arrivals. And there were photographs of Harry and Meghan in it, and then bizarrely they disappeared and were taken down. And People magazine have reported that was because guests going there were allowed to kind of tick a kind of no publicity option once they were inside, and Harry and Meghan ticked it, and their pictures are still up there. So it suggests that they may have complained to the Kardashians, which seems a bit churlish when you're going to someone's birthday party, and these are people who live their life.
And we already know you're there.
How can you go to a Kardashians party
yeah.
and then complain that about the publicity? What a joke.
I know, it just seems ridiculous to me, but you know, maybe it's because that was publicity they couldn't control, because everything they do now is very, you know, all the pictures and images are very carefully controlled and put out through their press teams in the US and the UK, and obviously they're almost handing over their image rights to someone else, so maybe they just thought it wasn't going to be flattering.
This relationship between the Harry and Meghan and the Kardashians is really interesting. I remember running a story a while back about Harry went on a skiing holiday with Kris Jenner's boyfriend, Corey.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and at the time we thought...
I'm not big on the Jenner Kardashian Wikipedia, sorry.
Yeah, no, at the time we thought, wow, didn't know that friendship existed.
Yeah.
But it does, and it's been sort of nurtured behind the scenes. But yeah, you know, Kris Jenner's the matriarch of the clan.
What do you think, Rebecca, what this says about where Harry's head is at? We hear, you know, he wants to come back to the UK sometimes. We hear that he's happy or not happy in America. Where are we on the narrative about where he is with things are?
I know people talk a lot about saying, oh, he's miserable with this kind of celebrity lifestyle that Meghan hankers after. Look, I can't pretend to know what goes on in Prince Harry's head, particularly not nowadays. You know, I haven't seen him in person for years, not since he left the royal family. But what I do know is when he was a working member of the royal family, he really quite liked the celebrity side of things, much more so, I would say, than Prince William. He seemed to thrive off them, and he quite liked the cachet of being around celebrities. So it does surprise me, people saying, oh, he doesn't like the celebrity lifestyle, because I always got the impression that was something he slightly hankered after, and actually indeed I think made the point in his memoir Spare that he wanted to make the most of his time before Prince George overtook him in popularity. So
well, look at the guests at his wedding. I mean, you know, there were kind of celebrities there who they were
He'd
surprised to be invited.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that tells you we need to know. So I think maybe some people are kind of projecting their thought process on what actually is the situation.
Interesting. Well, one royal who never seems fussed with what life hands her is, of course, Princess Anne, the Princess Royal. She flew to Australia for just 4 days to take part in remembrance services. Now, oh gosh, I wish I wasn't familiar with this, but for those who are not familiar with that route, as well as the jet lag, the journey itself is at least 21 hours. And then she flew 8 or 9 hours or so to Singapore to carry out more work. That's quite some going, isn't it, Richard? Tell us about it.
Yeah, I love seeing these pictures. This was Princess Anne in her role as Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Australian Corps of Signals. I think they've got
well
that right.
Done, yeah.
But she was wearing their ceremonial uniform, looked great, and obviously, I mean, even though it's a hell of a long journey, she's always happy to make it, but doesn't seem to stay that long. So she's, I think, you know, her husband's commented on how she's always keen to get back to Gatcombe Park and see her horses.
Well, yeah, but maybe, I don't know, do you think Australia might be, you know, why is she so keen to get away? Why not make a, you know, a little bit more of a holiday of it?
She always just packs everything, because she obviously was doing a lot of other engagements there. She packs more engagements in those 4 days than some people do in like a week or so. So
do you think she had a Golden Gate time?
I had a Golden Gate time thanks to you, Joe.
Yeah.
I think I sent you picture proof of that, didn't I?
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, and she's a workhorse, isn't she? She never lets the jet lag seem to bother her. I felt like when I was around there last year, I was going to walking around like a zombie half the time. But she's amazing. A phenomenal work ethic.
Well, come on, Aussies, did you see Anne on that whistle-stop trip? Please let us know in the comments if you managed to capture her in a photograph, as difficult as that might be because she's too quick. And if you did get a picture of her, you can share that in our community page. Now, Anne wasn't the only royal making a big, relatively under the radar visit. You can always count on Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, for a bit of that. She was also abroad. What was she doing, Rebecca?
Well, she's there now, actually. She's on a 9-day trip to Central and South America, taking countries including Peru and Belize. Again, organisations and initiatives very close to her heart, championing the rights of women and girls. I wish I could have gone on that with her. The press weren't invited on this trip, but I was out there in South America and I could have been a short hop on from Rio. But I will 100% get myself on one of these trips one day. But, you know, again, you know, powerful causes, you know, slightly under the radar, but still really, really important.
Absolutely. Did you hear that? Well, if Anne and Sophie's trips weren't heroic enough, it's now time to celebrate our weekly unsung hero. Richard, who have we got?
Yeah, this is Captain Will Jack, who is an equerry to Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh. And I nominate him for his devotion to duty because on Remembrance Sunday, he was at the cenotaph, even though his wife was back home waiting to give birth to their child. So I hope that he didn't miss the birth. I'll keep you updated if I hear more details, but it just shows you how you know, keen he is to do his bit, and it shows the importance of Remembrance Sunday generally. And
do keep us updated as well. Do you think that he's on target to be the people's new hot equerry?
It could be, yes. Yeah. I'll try and make him a regular in my diary column.
Okay, well, there you go. You heard it here first. Now, Rebecca, before we get to the montage, we should mention it's a certain person's birthday the day after we record this. Who am I talking about? Anyone important?
The King, of course.
Yeah.
14th of November, King Charles will be turning 77. I can't tell you too much in detail because a lot of this is embargoed, but guess what? He's working and he's got a really busy day of engagement.
He always works on his birthday.
Yeah, he does. And I think he makes a point of it. You know, this is all about, you know, diligence and devotion to duty. But there'll be a particularly good picture, I think, on Friday. Something he's doing. I'm not being mischievous. It genuinely is embargoed until it happens.
And
but
does he like a birthday cake and all of that malarkey?
He'll do it. Yeah. But he doesn't really like much of a fuss.
Or do you think he just pretends? Do you think he just pretends to grumble but secretly wants
Well,
the
he wouldn't
cake?
be happy if no one acknowledged it, would he?
No,
Let's be
but
honest.
I remember interviewing the then Duchess of Cornwall in India years ago. One of the first times I'd actually interviewed her, and it was around her husband's landmark birthday. I think it must have been his 60th or 65th, I can't remember which, it was so long ago. And I said, what are you going to do for his birthday? And she said, I'll probably stand there with a sign, jumping up and down, going, happy birthday, darling, because he's so busy working, he forgets, you know.
And will the Royal Press Corps buy him anything? I'll never forget you telling me you all rallied in and got him some hot nuts for the squirrels.
That was for his 70th.
Yeah.
Well, what do you get the man who has everything?
Hot nuts.
Calling by Val Lowe, actually, he's not a stranger to this programme. He'd been sent a free thing of hot spicy nuts that would scare off grey squirrels, and King Charles famously hates grey squirrels. He loves red squirrels, so we gave it to him in a bag. And there's a photo of me and Val with him laughing. We put a balloon on it, and I remember all the broadcasters being really sniffy and thinking, oh, I can't believe you're doing that, you know, so gimmicky. He loved it, and it was the picture of the day, him getting this bag with a big balloon on it. So happy birthday, King Charles.
You know what you're doing.
We expect you to be doing nothing less but working. But, you know, good on you.
Well, indeed, this occasion felt like it did deserve a very special montage. So on the occasion of His Majesty King Charles' 77th birthday, here are 77 pictures over his lifetime. Obviously, of course, we're wishing His Majesty a very happy birthday from everybody here. We hope the presents are good. Won't top hot nuts, but you know, we can but try. A reminder that our interview with the author Andy Webb about his new book will play next, so click here to give that a watch. What he says might well surprise you. Just time to now to say thank you to the panellists, Richard and Rebecca, and to you for watching. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.